using a tool like what we're doing right now in a virtual meeting format, I can evaluate and I can put our tool, for example, in place and evaluate 500 customer interviews and pull out what's important from all of them, and then be able to build a strategy on that basis around how best to meet the next 500 customers. Only in this time, I want to increase and even produce more sales.
Welcome back to another installment of the NextGen Case Study series. On today's episode, we have Thomas Ross, who is the Director of Sales and AI at SOAR.com, where he leads the integration of AI technologies to enhance sales strategies and customer interactions. With a background in leveraging AI for competitive advantage in sales, Thomas focuses on helping organizations use AI tools to boost efficiency and optimize decision-making processes. His expertise makes him a pivotal player in AI-driven sales transformation, which is why we're excited to have him on the program. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me, Devin.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm really excited to get into some of the work that you're doing at SOAR. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's start with a couple of minutes on who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the Director of Sales and AI at SOAR.
Sure. So I've been doing sales development and transformation, digital transformation and technology for years and years and years. So it was a natural evolution. We've certainly seen AI and a number of the other technologies come in and change sales over the years. So sales has become much more of a digital technology over the last decade or so, with many of the old tools falling away. And now with AI coming into play, not just for sales, but organizationally, it brings all these other new tools and continues to evolve both the organization and certainly sales.
Yeah, there's something to be said about the small demographic of guys like yourself who kind of helped pave the way between, or bridge the gap, I guess, between that traditional approach to sales where everything was hands-on, it was one-on-one, it was personal. This is handshakes and telephone calls or showing up at a place of business. And now all of it seems to be trickling through some sort of online vehicle. I wonder if you can kind of share a little bit about some of your experiences as that transition took place.
Yeah, and you've described that journey quite eloquently. I mean, back in the day, you were knocking on doors at businesses, you were sending faxes, right?
Oh,
You
right.
you were sending emails and but mostly letters, right? So you were doing a lot of very manual and analog type of things. And frankly, that didn't change a lot. Email came along and took over that. And then the internet came along and changed with websites and communication with that. But much of those old methodologies stayed in place, and sales has followed its same process for the most part, even today. So even as we added a lot of the new digital technologies, AI comes to mind, of course, today. But even before that, there have been other tools that have made sales much more impactful and effective. But many organizations still haven't made those leap. So I really liked your comparative there, where you said bridging the gap as opposed to trying to pave new roads. You're kind of doing both.
Mhm.
So yes, there are all these new ways of communicating and creating the best customer experience by way of optimizing sales. But you've got a bridge between where companies are and where they need to be. You also have to help companies understand that if they don't make that bridge and that crossing, that side of the equation is going to fall away, and they're going to fall away with it. So you better get over that bridge, or things aren't going to go well in the future as you might have hoped.
Well, in making that transition, what I imagine you're very present to, and I think from your vantage point, you might be able to offer some insight into this. What sort of transferable principles exist kind of in both parallels in that offline world of handshakes and fax machines and the online world of emails and text messages? What is similar between the two that you find to be kind of non-negotiables?
Well, it all comes down to the customer experience, and
Mm.
whether you're using social media or SMS or emails or any or all of those different things. It's not about what you're using. It's about what your customers are using. How are they talking to each other? How are they finding out about you and your services and your company? in the first place. And what we've come to realize is that most customers are already much further down the line in terms of understanding what they need than they ever were 5 years, 10 years, and certainly 15 years ago. So that has changed. And we have to be aligned with them, not the other way around. And that's the mistake that most companies are making. We're chasing customers rather than bringing them in. And there's no chasing needed. They're there, they're looking for us, but we're not in the right place or looking in the right direction. So we need to be providing the opportunity for that customer to find us, to learn more about us, to see that we might have some answers to questions they have, and then be in a position whereby we can facilitate that. What technology does by way of AI is to help drive and facilitate that. So for me, I'm not awake 24/7. I don't know if you are, and you might be, I'm not sure, but I'm not, but AI is. So no matter where my customers are and what they're doing, they can ping me and they can get in touch with any of our different channels in order to ask the kinds of questions that they may have, and they're getting answers right away. And then we can respond and come into that process at a point in the customer experience process and journey that makes the most sense for our type of product solution or whatever it is we're trying to provide to that customer.
So, Thomas, what I hear you kind of pointing at is that there's a fundamental psychology here in the way that a consumer interacts with a business. And because they all still possess that need to transact with that business, that process still exists where, okay, we got to find that solution, then we got to vet that solution. And it used to maybe be that we would talk to a few close friends or neighbors or maybe colleagues or business partners. Um, but that was kind of the extent of the research that we could do. Now, beyond that, once we kind of get to that decision making process, there's a lot of like really cool tools that make that easier. But that research part of it, I think, has kind of changed the game for a lot of businesses. And if you aren't present to that, or at least aware of that in that customer experience, you could be really missing out on some of the opportunities. And so this kind of points at some of the really big fundamental changes in these sales processes and systems and psychology. And I wonder if maybe you could speak to what other big changes exist that businesses are kind of facing a challenge with.
Well, sure. And all along the way, it continues to change. We used to go to Google, right? And we type in whatever it is we're looking. We don't do that anymore,
Right.
right? We bring up Siri or whatever the tool is that we're using. Most searches are voice.
Hmm.
So the very nature of what's being asked and how it's being asked has radically changed. So that's changed the way the search engines work. So that's changed the way we market and advertise and create pay-per-click programs or any other type of digital marketing because the customers aren't coming in the same way. And furthermore,
Hmm.
when they get the information, they're getting it in a different format. And now you need different tools in order to get on the same road that they're on, right? And most businesses, they haven't figured that out. They're still back in 2005 trying to do, the best type of SEO word search matches that they can create when the customers aren't there at all. They've been gone a long time. So that's where the reality is. And AI can play an amazing component with that and get you up to speed in front of and working with those customers now. And that's where we need to be. And so for our solution with respect to SOAR, we offer a portfolio of products. One with respect to sales in particular helps businesses, salespeople, leaders, managers, etc., communicate and learn from the way customers are working and really be part of that process rather than chasing them around and trying to figure where they're at.
Right. So, okay, this is a lot of 30,000 foot stuff. I'm wondering if we can maybe zoom in a little bit and take a look at some of the work that you're doing as it directly relates to SOAR and how you've been implementing some of these strategies for yourself, just so we can get an example or an idea of like how to actually um, take action on some of these higher level strategies.
So the key is, you have to be 30,000 feet up because you have to see what that customer journey is, right? And every organization has bits and pieces of that journey that are working well or aren't working, and they have to figure out what those are. And then as we approach the ground and as we start to look closer at where things can be fixed and adjusted and optimized, that's where AI can fall into place into those different components. And one of the areas that we address, which you touched on earlier, today people don't meet one-on-one very often, right? So most people are much like you and I are communicating right now. In fact, 90+% of my meetings are just this. And so in order for me to be effective in that regard, I need to make this mechanism very, very powerful, intuitive, and helpful in that regard. So whether a customer is going online to an AI tool that does a lot of this through this kind of medium, or I'm working with my customer in that regard because they've made part of that journey. Now they've reached out, we're communicating and having that conversation. I need to be able to see the buying signals. I need to be able to make sure that I'm communicating effectively. And I need to be able to see that my team, if I have a sales team or marketing team or leadership team, can see how customers are interacting so that we can continue to improve both our leadership methodologies, our sales techniques, our selling methodologies, or just the plain old simple customer communication. And our tool helps people and companies do that very effectively.
So when it comes to the execution of these strategies, you guys really are the practitioners of what you're preaching in terms of like, okay, here's the digital tools that are out there. We're actually using them in this way, and this is the result that we're getting. We're able to actually find the people we want to help, and we're able to or enabled to help them. So how do you then enroll the team and get everybody that's kind of in the organization involved in making these changes? As you kind of alluded to at the top of the show, a lot of these businesses still have no idea how to use half of these things that exist on the internet, in spite of the fact that we as consumers are using the internet to make buying decisions.
It drives me crazy. What you said is 100% correct. And yet, of course, it shouldn't be, right? You and I are having this conversation and we're using technology. And
Right.
every business owner, every salesperson, every leader, every manager is doing the same thing. And yet they don't know how to do that with a customer. Well, that doesn't make sense, right? You and I both use social media by way of direct messaging or by way of communicating directly through social media, through FaceTime or WhatsApp or whatever it may be. And we do that all the time. We're used to that. And yet we don't do that with customers.
Hmm.
So it isn't that the technology is overwhelming. That's not the issue. The issue is we're not putting one and one together, and we're not making that natural transition to meet our customers where they are. So believe it or not, this is less about technology and much more about a mindset.
And that's a little bit different, and I would imagine a lot more difficult to have an impact on, because a lot of mindset comes from experience, and you have these businesses who still think that sending out flyers in the mail is what's going to drive traffic into their business, when the paper that they are printing those messages on is getting used as hamster cage lining. Like there's no actual use for it. And unless you're a billion-dollar company like Domino's who can afford to just burn money, you got to get a little bit more intentional about the marketing or your efforts that you're putting forward. So how do you address that mindset? How do you impact or influence somebody to deconstruct their current belief and then rebuild one that's actually going to serve them in their business?
Right. And so the way you do that is by, and I say this with all due respect and kindness to everybody that I've already had to do this with, you've got to give them a shake, you know? And you're not doing that physically, but you certainly are doing that emotionally and mentally. And you say, listen, what you're doing isn't working. What used to be a 10, 15, 20% return is now a 1 or 2% return, right? Your cost for pay-per-click advertising used to be 15 cents a click. It's now $15 a click, right? And you're getting less results. This isn't rocket science. I don't need to be your CFO. I don't need to be your banker to tell you this is going the wrong way. So what we need to do is to find a much more effective, cost-effective, easy way for you to communicate without having all of these challenges, right? That's going to do all sorts of things. Your salespeople are going to start to have fun. They're going to start to enjoy what they're doing rather than dreading coming in to hear you ask them, how many cold calls did you make today? Because the last thing you should be doing in most cases is making cold calls. Again, you're chasing people. Why are you chasing people? They're already here. It's you that's in the wrong place, not them, right? So we need to help them connect those dots. And we need to help them use AI and use social media and use digital marketing. And the same kind of tool that you and I are using today can help them get better at doing that, can help them look at reports for doing that, can help them create analytics so they can really help their customers and their clients improve what they're doing, not just what we're able to do for them, right? And when we put all these pieces together and give them the right tools, but also, as you said earlier, and this is the key, this isn't about my technology is better than their technology or better than their technology. You know, we woke up this morning with a new announcement from ChatGPT with a whole new type of AI they've introduced today, right? Every day is a new day. So it's not about that. It's about how to communicate effectively with your customers and whether you know how to do that already, and then to use the right tool for the right purpose within your system. And it's our job to help you do that. So ours may or may not be the perfect fit, but what we will do is help you find out where you're at in the first place so that you can use the best products to facilitate finally getting to the point where you're pulling customers in and communicating with them where they are rather than chasing them.
I'm so present to that whole chasing versus attracting methodology, and I I can admit with a little bit of shame that I did start my business chasing, and
Sure.
and I think we all kind of to some degree do. And once you realize how labor intensive and time consuming and resource draining that is, you kind of come to this realization that there's got to be a smarter or a better way. And so creating a strategy that centers around attracting people into your business is it becomes the kind of the next logical step. However, the the practical application and implementation of a strategy like that now makes it really difficult for me or anybody else for that matter to step into that space without some degree of overwhelm or confusion or this feeling of being lost or in over your head. For the average business out there, what do you say is the best first place to start when it comes to making that transition from the real world into this kind of digital ecosystem of marketing tools?
Well, I mean, the obvious best step is talk to me. Or an advisor and an organization that's there not just to sell whatever the product or the AI tool or whatever other technology tool might be, but rather to help you find your customers and to get in tune with your own customers so that you can do that naturally. The fact is, and again, I mentioned this, we're already using technologies we don't even know we're using. AI is already all over this thing, right? And you're using AI whether you know it or not. And AI is already built into what you and I are doing right here, right now, right? AI is already ubiquitous. So what we need to do is to find a way to make it useful for us, right? And so it's not really about retraining on new technology. It's really about, hey, stop using it just for gaming or for communicating with your friends. Let's start doing it and using it so we can communicate with customers. Let's do that. It's easier. It's much more fun. You'll have a lot more fun communicating with customers than you ever did before, right? And you're going to find it a lot easier to get the results you're working for and you're looking for. So my role and our role at SOAR is to really take a look at what you're doing and then help you build one to match the other. So your customer experience right now is this. You're probably doing this, right? I'm going to help you align this so that you can now communicate with customers effectively using a real tool that you're going to find it very, very easy to use. But more importantly, so your clients and your
Right.
customers.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've been actually laughing out loud in a text message conversation with somebody who is a prospect or a client, just because of how playful it can be when you're exploring some of the stuff, and it's almost necessary, because a big part of this is messaging, and
Yeah.
uh, there's this. And I don't know if I'm going to use this term correctly, but there's like an old school way of thinking where everything absolutely has to be 100% polished and professional and very articulate, and it becomes really obvious now to the modern consumer, whether that's B2B or B2C, that you are trying too hard to get their business. It comes across salesy and pitchy. It comes across as disingenuous, and only focused on the transaction rather than the relationship, which is, I think, a big shift that's happened in marketing. Just from in my experience in the last, I'll say, 15 years, it's gone from, hey, we're here, we do this really cool thing, to, hey, like, let's get to know each other to see if we can help each other. And I don't know if that's a necessity out of just the sheer fact that there's so many options now for things, like especially with like white label technologies and things like that, or if it's just an exhaustion of people just being sick and tired of that marketing engine constantly chirping in their ear every 8 minutes on television, and every 4 minutes on the radio. And, even now in our regular content consuming habits, it's the same thing over and over again. Are you this person looking for this thing? Da, 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 da. And it's like, okay, we've become a parody of ourselves in this. And so there's like a need for more authentic and more genuine communication. I wonder if you have any experience or insight in that. What's your perspective on that shift of like that traditional sales engine to like where we're at now with more relationship driven stuff?
Well, you couldn't have said that any better than you did. And I will say that I've been part of that all the way through. So I've been in the sales digital marketing area for longer than I really want to admit. So I've seen everything from the Zig Ziglar days back in the 80s, right on through to today's days, where we're using all these different types of AI to actually be the initial contact for a customer. And here's the thing, when you think about it, 5 years ago, right? If you went onto a website, or you even went on with your mobile onto a site, it was often that you got a chat box of one kind or another, and people actually hated chat boxes. They avoided them at all costs. And the first thing they're looking is, I want an agent. I want to talk to somebody. That has totally shifted, right? Because it's gotten so good. It's gotten so informative, and it's gotten so quick, right? That now we don't want the agent. We can get what we need from the chatbot without what you said, the salesy pitch, or somebody now trying to say, if you don't buy this in 5 minutes, your car is going to explode, right? So
Yeah.
I'm being, a little extreme there, but you see my point. People don't like that. They want to move through the process at their own speed and then pull the trigger when they're ready to do so. And we need to match that, not change that, within reason, right? Now, there is a point, and this is really important with AI as well as just the sales process. And you mentioned it with respect to relationships. When you're doing a hard sell, right, which is what you were describing earlier, that doesn't work because people don't feel comfortable in asking you that next question because they're so worried you're just going to try and jam it down there, right? As opposed to you develop that relationship and then they say, hey, Devin, I've been having this problem. Would this really help me with that? And if so, how? And you have the conversation. And now you're moving them through. And you might say, our solution will help in that regard, but not fully. You might want to look at this too, so that you can combine the two, whatever the case may be. But now it is a relationship. And technology helps you do that, whether it's social media, because it's so easy to text, right? Whether it's a Zoom call, or a GoToMeeting, or a Teams call, or any of these tools that we're all using all day long, right? We all know how to use these tools, But what we're not doing is using them properly to help the customer get the best customer experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very present to that. I I have a hard time, or I have had a hard time in the past of kind of like bridging that gap between like, hey, I'm a sales guy. I'm here to sell you a thing. Let me ask you all the right questions to lead you to that thing. And then at the end of the day, there's this kind of residue on the whole transaction that just feels
Right.
like I didn't do a good enough job here. Maybe I was leaning a little bit too heavily into this or this, that, or the other. And I found that the best results that I got came from just having regular conversation with somebody. I'm not trying to ask anything in particular other than what it is that you want to share with me. And I've found now that in that exploration of, hey, what's going on in your world? Is there anything that you want to share with me? And then allowing people the space to do that, I think has created a bit more of a opportunity for genuine interactions. And so in a day and age now where, there's a ton of different ways where we can figure out what our customers are asking. And if anybody's listening or watching and doesn't know how to do this, I'm going to give you three places: answerthepublic.com, Quora, or Google itself. If you go to Google, you type in a question, you scroll down just a little bit, it'll give you a little section called People Also Ask. And then there's four questions there. If you open one of those and then close them back up, it's going to populate another four. And if you do that 100 times, you're going to get a really good idea of what people are asking as it relates to your thing. And so it becomes really obvious that the next course of action is to create some content that's going to meet those people where they're asking that question, and hope that the algorithm gods will serve up your platter of value to the people that are searching for it. But there also comes a time where, okay, I have to make a decision between running my business and like serving my clients and acquiring clients and doing all the things that it takes to acquire those clients. And so where do I make the handoff, and when does it make sense for me as a business owner or as an executive to say, you know what, we don't have the capacity, or this is no longer efficient. We need to, look for some support somewhere along the lines. In your experience, Thomas, when is the best time to kind of make that decision?
Yesterday. It's like that old line, right? When was the best time to plant a tree? 30 years ago or today, right? It's the same philosophy. It's the same thinking. By the way, some of the things that you spoke to that in the past, and the past was yesterday, by the way, or the day after, or the day before, I'm not sure which, were so time consuming. They aren't anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I can get AI to do what you just said like that. Right? Now, furthermore, if I'm recording and keeping the data of the communications with my customers, I can use our solution and go into all of that and pull out exactly what you said and know exactly what my customers are looking and asking for when I probably didn't hear it. And I can't tell you how often I've gone into the various meetings I've had, discussions, whatever they are, and my perception was, I hit it out of the park, or this is really what they were looking for, not that. And I go into it going, man, I'm dead wrong. Right. And I would have gone the wrong way. So AI can be an amazing tool to be productive, efficient, and to be an important part of your process. The key is that the right thing? The key is, where and how are you going to use it within your process, right? You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to have 10 developers on your team to suddenly take over for your sales or your marketing or your customer service team. You need to simply use tools that are intuitive and work well for you. And that's the key. And that's what AI has brought. It's made everything easier. And we give our customers now the opportunity to talk to us whatever way they want to. We're going to get it irrespective. And we're going to be able to work with them and communicate with them like that. And that's the magic. Let them find you, but help them do it.
Make it easy for them to find you. I love that. Thomas, you've been very generous with your time and your wisdom, and I'm very grateful for that. As we kind of come to a close here, I wonder if we can look forward a little bit into the future and some of the work that you're doing. What sorts of things are you excited about for SOAR, or maybe what kind of trends and technologies are coming down the pipeline that you're excited about? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, so AI is going to continue to do what it's doing, and that's not really that important. And I don't want people to get fixated with that. But what I will say is that if you're not evolving and you're not keeping up with your customers, never mind the technology. Technology is going to continue to come, and AI is a huge disruptor, no question, but it's your customers that count, not the technology. If your customers don't use that technology, who cares? But if they are using that technology and it can help in the experience and help you do better, then you better get there, right? And you don't have time to waste with that. So you need to have access and that kind of information at your fingertips. And this is really important. So what we're doing is a lot of events. So we've got a 2-day virtual online trade show happening September 25th and 26th, and it's called Sales 3.0 Conference. And we're doing it with the good folks from Selling Power magazine that you may have known. That's now all virtual, of course. And we're doing a 2-day event with them. We're the gold sponsors, SOAR AI and Sales AI, and one of our other products, Workplace AI. And we're introducing what we're doing and how that can work with some other amazing new sales-based AI products. So I invite everybody here to look that up. And again, that's Sales 3.0 Conference, September 26th or 25th and 26th, right? You'll find it under Selling Power as well. You can also find it on our website at salescribe.com. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. That's the kind of thing that we're doing. But remember, this isn't about what's the neatest, greatest technology / product, who's got the best this. It's not about that. It's about where are your customers and how are you going to hold them in a way that they will communicate with you and create those relationships that you were talking about. One thing I like to leave people with. Do you like your relationship and your experience with Amazon?
That's a tough one.
I've yet to find somebody tell me no. They love it because Amazon does all those things that you talked about, right? We need to be Amazon to our clients. We need to make it that easy. Every step, Amazon's got it figured out to a science, right? That's what we need to be. You can reach Amazon on anything, anywhere, anyhow. And no matter what direction you come at it, they're going to come back to you and they're intuitive. That's what we need to do. Does it need to be to that extreme? Are we using the same model? Are we in the same competitive nature? No, but the same philosophy is what matters. We want to create the most amazing customer experience we can. And the only way to do that is to meet clients and customers where they are. And where they are is right here using AI and many other tools.
Mm-hmm. Very powerful. This has been great. To wrap things up here, I always like to ask one final question. If there was somebody who's kind of out there, up to it, trying to make something or create something or build a business, and they're facing some challenges and struggles and going through it, what sort of advice might you offer them to keep them on track or help them get over whatever they're facing right now?
Right. So it all, of course, depends upon the nature of that. But if we assume that it's sales and customer based, right, and reaching customers and finding them and developing new sales and revenues, first thing you want to do is identify who the heck they are, what they look like, what their profiles are, and then go talk to a whole bunch of them, right? Find them and just talk to them and say, how would you normally buy this or that? And how do you look for this or that? And what would make you think that this or that is going to be effective? And listen to them, right? And get them into formats like this. Using a tool like what we're doing right now in a virtual meeting format, I can evaluate and I can put our tool, for example, in place and evaluate 500 customer interviews and pull out what's important from all of them, and then be able to build a strategy on that basis around how best to meet the next 500 customers. Only in this time, I want to increase and even produce more sales.
Very powerful advice. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, Thomas, what's the best way for them to do that?
Thomas@soar.com is the best way. They can get me on LinkedIn. They can get me on Twitter. They can get me on Facebook. They can get me on Instagram. I'm a digital nomad, so you can even text me or WhatsApp me. So there's any number of ways. The quickest and fastest is probably through LinkedIn or through my email.
Beautiful. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. I love how accessible you are. This is just proof in the pudding for the conversation that we've had today, Thomas. Thank you.
I'll say one thing in closing, and I thank you so much for your time, is that most people think they're accessible when you go to their LinkedIn profile or any of their profiles. Guess what? There's no information there. There's their pretty picture, whatever that is or isn't, and there's no contact information.
Yeah, funny how that is. A really great way to circle back on the whole conversation. Thomas, thank you so much for joining me. We'll make sure to link to your stuff in the show notes so that people listening or watching can find you easily. And on that note, if you want to get in touch with me and my team for any of your marketing or AI needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us for this conversation, and I will see you in the next.